I call the honourable member for Melbourne.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Minister called the Minister for the Environment. Under our previous energy laws—
The member for Melbourne will phrase his question correctly.
Well, I call him the member for Melbourne.
My question is to the Minister for the Environment. Under our previous clean energy laws, polluters had to pay for some of the costs of their pollution, with much of the money raised going to households. Isn't it the case that under the deal you announced yesterday, Australia's biggest polluters now have a choice? They can get a handout paid for by households, or they can ignore the scheme altogether because there will now be no legal obligation to cut pollution at all.
I call the honourable Minister for the Environment. There'll be silence on my left.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I am delighted to take this question from the member for Melbourne because it highlights some not insignificant differences between this side of the House and that side of the House. We did an agreement to uphold our election promises, to abolish the carbon tax and to implement our emissions reduction fund. He was at the heart of an agreement to break their election promises. He led the Labor government to break their election promises. We made an agreement to keep our election promises. We said we'd abolish the carbon tax, and we did. We said that electricity prices would come down, and they did. We said that we would make life easier for families, and we did. They said on that side there would be no carbon tax under a government I lead. He did the dirty deal with this group of people to break their election promises, to increase the cost of living for families. And you know what's worst? You know what's worst? It was a failed policy. It didn't do its job. Less than 1% decrease in emissions for a $7.5 billion a year tax. And where does it go after this? They talk about, in some way, this is a mythical tax on polluters. Well, let me give you the facts. There were $30 billion of handouts to big companies, $30 billion of handouts to big companies under their carbon tax. The all-time money go round in Australian political history. $9.2 billion to general industry in the form of handouts to steel and paper and glass, aluminium, zinc and cement. Another $300 million for steel, where, wait for this, the only qualification was not that they did anything, but they had a bank account. There was $5.5 billion for an energy security fund. This sounds good. And do you know what the energy security fund was? The energy security fund was cash and kind payments to Victoria's brown coal generators, an almost $250 million payment to Hazelwood in cash, an almost $250 million payment in cash to your Lord, an almost $250 million payment in cash to Loy Yang. That's the dirty deal. You were giving almost $30 billion to big firms. Nobody gets anything under us unless they reduce emissions. And overwhelmingly what we're looking at is supporting the rural sector, of working with farmers, of working with communities, of making an absolute guarantee and protection for prime agricultural land, and doing this in a way which reduces emissions, improves our economy and supports productivity.